Well, it's going to have to be different, isn't it? The interesting thing is, I think Gordon Brown is somebody who people may respect. There are elements of his track record so far that people don't like, to do with pensions, for example. But people may respect as being able, but I don't think they like him. The difference between him and Blair is that Blair, to start off with, was very greatly liked and was very charming, very charismatic man. I don't think Brown's got that. And when things started to get difficult, Blair could trade for a while, not indefinitely, and I think people are fed up with him now, but Blair could trade for a while on that charm. Brown doesn't have that, so he's basically got to deliver results, because that's what he does.
Do you not think that he might grow into the role, though, that because he's been in a position so far where he hasn't really had so much opportunity to show a different side of his character? And you may be right, he hasn't got it. But there is that possibility that it often happens with leaders, once they get to the position of ultimate power, sort of something switches on. And I detect in the last...
Who do you think that's happened to recently? In the last other prime ministers?
Well, I think Margaret Thatcher, actually. I don't think she was a charismatic politician before she actually got to Downing Street, and it took her a while in Downing Street to get there. I mean, Ronald Reagan always had charisma. But I think Michael Howard, funny enough, I think for the first few months of Michael Howard's leadership, he developed this sort of more engaging persona. I think it went away again after a few months. Right. But I wonder whether Gordon Brown might just carry that one off.
Well, if he's got the seeds of that inside him, he's kept them jolly well hidden for a very long time. Put it that way. Right, we will have to wait and see. I think it will be quite a serious transformation if he manages to pull that off. Yeah. But that means that Cameron needs to engage with him in a different way than he has with Blair. But there are a number of things which are already in the works. I mean, I'm involved in a very, very small way with the policy review, for example, as Oliver Letwin's PPS. That's going to start producing. I mean, you've already got a few straws in the wind of ideas being announced, but you're going to start seeing more and more of that coming through at a far faster rate. In the second half of this summer, and really into the autumn is when it's going to be sort of most things are going to be being published. That will start to put a lot more flesh on the bones, and that will mean that if Brown wants to do the big clunking fist thing, then there will be an opportunity for Cameron and other front benchers to go toe to toe and trade policy blows if they want to. It may be a style of political debate and campaign that actually is unintelligent to do with Brown. I'm not sure how we should best be fighting him. But the ammunition will be there if they want to do it.
So you mentioned that you're Oliver Letwin's PPS. What does that involve you doing? How on earth did you let him make that speech the other day?
One of the things it doesn't involve is me vetting his speeches.
Maybe it should.
Well, it's interesting actually with Oliver's speech last week or the week before, because the world divides very clearly into people who read the first page and gave up because of all the long words. And the people who read on, because just at the start of the second page, actually he sort of throws the whole thing up in the air and says, actually I've been deliberately using all these long words to prove a point, which is that one or two people on the other side have been using long words and trying to pretend that makes them clever. And actually being intelligent and coming up with well-expressed political ideas involves expressing complicated ideas in great simplicity. And I promise you that if you read on to the second page, I'm sure you did, but for everybody else who didn't,
no, I didn't.
he doesn't. I think he uses the word paradigm about 8 times in the first page.
Yeah, that kind of put me off.
And never again after that. So right. it is worthwhile reading on. I promise.
Maybe I'll go back to it. But I mean, he's got quite a difficult role, hasn't he, with this sort of overarching policy role, because he's going to be no one's friend in this. And I think with Oliver that he's a great sort of academic. But has he got the sort of political brain that this whole policy process needs?
Oh yes, yes, easily. I mean, you're right. He's got a tremendously good academic brain as well. But yes, he has. And the point to remember as well is that I think Oliver was one of the first big beasts to back David Cameron, and therefore he's got a lot of access and help from and advice from many of the other people in the senior levels of the shadow cabinet, and so there's an awful lot of political opinions being added to any ideas, not just from Oliver, but from all other sides too. So there's plenty of opportunity to kick those sorts of things around. But yes, there's an enormous amount of opportunity there. I don't think it's that he's going to be no one's friend. Actually, I think that he's probably providing an awful lot of help for very many people on the front bench. They've got an enormous number of ideas for themselves, but there are some things which, frankly, are enormously detailed, and you can always use some more high-quality analysis and staff help to help develop. And providing it's done in a way which is complementary and at arm's length as well, I think he's being perceived so far, at least, as a help rather than a hindrance. I hope so.
Right, well, we do a sort of quick fire round now, which delves into your personality. So
God.
I'll just ask you quick questions. Who's your best friend on the Labour or Lib Dem benches?
There's probably a couple of members of my select committee who would be great fun to be with, certainly. I mean, Terry Rooney, who's the chairman of my select committee, has got a very wry sense of humour about him. He's quite fun. And Natasha Engel, as well, is good news. So both Labour.
Okay. Who's your best friend on the Tory benches?
I think you've already had him in, haven't you? Is it Jerry Hunt?
Indeed.
Was at university with my wife, so I sort of know him vaguely.
Well, he seems to be the most popular so far. Several people have said him.
There you are, you see.
Future
Nice man.
Future leader there, obviously.
Yeah, nice man.
Intellectual or philosophical hero?
I don't think I've got one. I'm sorry, but this comes of not being a politician at university.
Oliver Letwin, obviously.
Yeah, oh, clearly, yes. I thought you wanted me to go back and say Burke or Disraeli or one of these.
Somehow.
Not having been involved in politics at university, I'm not one of these people who sort of read the complete works of Winston Churchill or something like that. I'm sorry, that's not
What
me.
about a political hero?
No, not got one of those either. Sorry.
That's very unusual.
I'm sorry about that.
Right, okay. Political hate figure?
No, I just don't have that sort of political hinterland that everybody. I really should have spent my 20s sort of being involved in factional infighting and developing these. I'm afraid I haven't got any of these for you.
Well, you're not alone in that. Most people say, oh, I'm not a person who hates. Ed Vaizey came and reeled off about 20 people.
But with a twinkle in his eye.
Yes, exactly, yes. Your biggest embarrassment? Any sort of election tales of...
Actually, the biggest embarrassment so far was about a week after I got to the Commons, and I was late for a meeting, and I came hammering out of my office, ran straight across the bit of lawn that's above the underground car park, headed for Carriage Gate. What I didn't realise was that I had tripped all sorts of alarms, it being right next to the outside wall, and two very large and burly men in uniform sort of loomed up and said, "Can we help you, sir?" And apparently, the entire Westminster area had gone to DEFCON 3 because Penrose had been treading on the wrong bit of grass. So never again have I gone anywhere near it.
Okay. Your biggest fear?
Losing to the Liberal Democrats at the next general election, having won it from them this time.
Your one policy to win the election?
Ooh. That's very, very hard. From my point of view, and I'm going to go local here, from my point of view, the important thing above all others in Weston-super-Mare is going to be to make sure that we have got some sort of progress on solving the local problem of drugs rehabs. That's partly a Westminster angle, and I'm talking to ministers about it. It's partly a council angle. We just won the council. Making progress on that and showing actual action, genuine action on that is going to be vital.
And what do you do when you're not doing politics?
Well, I've got two young daughters, so I've changed more nappies than I ever thought I would. That they take up a huge amount of time. I keep bees, and at the moment we've got...
How on earth did you get into that?
Oh, my father used to keep bees and became allergic, and I like the taste of honey, so I took over managing the hive when I was 12 or something. I'm not very good at it, I hasten to add, but it's a silly hobby. And at the moment we seem to have endless builders renovating my house, rather like you've got here.
Indeed.
So that takes up too much of my time as well.
Okay. And who makes you laugh?
Oh, blimey. Harry Enfield, my wife, and actually William Hague usually as well. So.
Good. And